Hey, it's Damon Davis, host of the Who Am I Really podcast. This podcast has always been personal to me. As an adoptee myself, I know how lonely questions can feel. This show started because I wanted to amplify the voices of people like us, people searching, discovering, and healing. But here's the honest part. Producing this podcast takes real time, effort, and resources. So if you found value listening to others or sharing your journey on the show, I'd be honored if you would consider supporting Who Am I Really on Patreon. For as little as a few dollars a month, your support helps me keep doing this work. Editing episodes, scheduling conversations, building community, and lifting our collective voices. It's not just about sustaining the show, it's about sustaining this space. There's no pressure. This isn't any obligation at all. It's an open invitation. If this podcast has meant something to you, if it helped you feel seen or heard, this is one way that you can give that gift forward. So if you're willing and able, head to patreon.com/WAIReally and become a supporter. And again, thank you for sharing your story, for being part of this community, and for showing up with honesty, vulnerability, and with your heart.
I don't need her to conspire in my healing. I'm wanted here because something even more powerful than parents, called the universe, needed me here. And for some reason, it needed me here. And so it's been a project of finding why I'm supposed to be here, and I want to help others, which has kind of kicked me into this whole project.
Who am I?
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 This is Who Am I Really? A podcast about adoptees that have located and connected with their biological family members. I'm Damon Davis, and you're about to meet Jeff. He called me from Southern California. Jeff grew up with the knowledge of and separation anxiety about his adoption. In reunion, he found his birth mother who mirrored his looks, but who has pushed the boundaries of their relationship, and a birth father who is simply not his type of guy. Jeff is the inspirational photographer behind the adoptee-focused Innocent People Project. This is Jeff's journey. Jeff grew up in Moraga, California, just behind the Berkeley Hills in the San Francisco Bay Area. His parents gave lots of love to him and his sister, but they have differing feelings about their adoptions. Even in their supportive home, adoption left its mark, and for Jeff, it showed up in moments that stuck with him over time.
I was always told that I was chosen and that I was loved. And, my sister, also younger than me, a year and a half younger, she was also adopted. So I always knew I was adopted, but it was a very supportive family in that sense. So in a way, I don't know if I really felt like I had any issue with it, even though some things would come up sometimes, playing tag after dinner in 6th, 7th grade. And like one time my neighbor said, well, Jeff, you're adopted, so how would you know, blah, blah. I'm like, ooh, that stung. There would be these things. Yeah. But growing up in the Bay, my parents, they met at a church in Berkeley. We attended that same church in Berkeley. There was a lot of different people in our community. There was also other kids that I knew, a few from church that had been adopted. And I knew that my parents hadn't been able to have kids. And so they adopted my sister and I, and that we were, it was a loving house, but that doesn't take away from, the other things that adoptees can get from that initial separation.
Yeah. Tell me about your family. How did you all get along? Did you look alike? Or, are you sort of the brunette in a home of blondes, or do you guys look like you absolutely could pass? Tell me about your family structure.
That was the odd thing. My dad was slender. My mom was blonde, and my sister and I, growing up, we were more blonde. I kind of became more brown as I brown haired as I got older. We looked the part, but most people in our church community knew the situation, but we looked the part. And so sometimes people who didn't know that I was adopted, I'd mention it and they would say, wow, you look just like your mom and dad. How could this be? But yeah, I forget what your second part of that question was.
I was just kind of interested in how you got along.
My
The
sister and I,
connection.
yeah, we're different people. And I think my sister took some things from the adoption and went one way with it. I went another way with it. I think I've worked extra hard on relationships, especially my love relationship with my wife, because I don't think I ever wanted to be left. So I think I've worked a little harder on making sure I'm not going to get left. So I'm a pretty attentive. I mean, I've got my faults, as everybody does, but I really wanted to make sure that my relationship was not something that would untether me again. And I start doing the spacewalk, adoption spacewalk again out there away from the shuttle. So my sister maybe had a harder time getting traction with relationships, and she found it a little bit later in life. But getting along, we were a little different. I think I had some success with sports and friends in high school, and my sister did too in certain respects, but I think she also was more rebellious than I was, more in line with my parents. And I think now I'm the one that's a little bit more outside the box, and my sister's the one that toes the line, and she's more fitting in with my folks. So
That is fascinating. Huh.
yeah.
Really interesting. Do you remember you talked about playing tag outside, sort of the kids knowing you were adopted and then freely bringing it up? Do you remember other triggers when you were younger? There's some classic ones that I can think of, but I don't want to seed your train of thought.
Well, I do remember one time I'm sitting at the dinner table, like 8 years old, and we had some friends over, and it was open enough that the father of this other family said, Jeff, what's it like to be adopted? And I said, well, I think it's great. I know that I was chosen, I'm loved. And at the time I was really getting into playing baseball, and I knew who Willie Mays was. I didn't know what he looked like. So I said, it's great. And who knows who my real father could be? Maybe it's Willie Mays. And everybody at their dinner table's laughing. And I'm like, what are they laughing about? I'm like, I don't think you're related to Willie Mays. And I realize now, okay, now I get it. But I immediately got put on the outside of that conversation and realized, yeah, there's things that I don't know. It did put me over here. And so even though I was supported and I really had a great relationship with my father, but there was always a knowing that I was not biologically connected.
Yeah.
So, but other triggers that would come up, I don't like to be in a conversation where somebody says, you know what, I'm tired of this, I'm leaving the room, I'm walking out. Like it kind of ties back into the let's work on my relationship so I can make sure that I'm not, relinquished by my love relationships. I got relinquished by my biological parents. Let's try not to repeat any more relinquishments.
That's
Yeah.
really fascinating. So for the
Yeah.
person in your life that may be, for lack of better words, a door closer, they shut down, right? I don't feel like
Yeah.
talking about this anymore and I'm out.
That's hard on me. That's
Really?
really hard on me. Yeah. And travel sometimes could be hard when I was younger. Going far away from home, I wouldn't like it because I felt like maybe I did one time when I was like 4 or 5 years old. My parents were taking us to San Francisco for the day. And I said, I don't want to go to San Francisco. And they said, why? And I said, I don't want to go. They said, why? I said, I'm afraid we're going to go there and then you're going to leave me and drive back to the East Bay, and I'm going to get left in San Francisco. And my dad threw his napkin down. He was a very pleasant, never got upset, but he was like, we love you so much. We're not leaving you. But that's a trauma that I still had, that I was still afraid that if I get too far away from home, I might not get myself back so I liked to stay around home a lot. It was something back then that was definitely part of my life for sure.
Wow. It's fascinating to me that you were that pensive about abandonment at such a young age. I can't help thinking that you were very in touch with the meaning of adoption at a young age for you to be able to do that. You know what I mean? I can't remember a time of not feeling secure, especially not at a young age. And I'm just wondering, do you recall anything happen? Did you get lost as a child? Did someone tell you you're not coming out? Like, how do you think you got so in touch with the meaning of adoption and separation at a young age?
Well, I think it's, our folks told us very young and said, I remember saying one time, like, what does it mean to be adopted? I know you've told us. And this is like conversation when I'm like 4. And they said, that means that your biological mother was not able to keep you, and she loved you so much, she wanted you to have a better life. And we've chosen you, and we love you so much. And there's kids probably in this neighborhood that don't even know if their parents wanted them or not. They just showed up. But we actively went to get you, so you know that you were wanted by us. And so I knew that, but I also knew that I was not in the household that I would have been if I knew that there had been a separation. So I think that did not get lost on me.
Mm.
And, it's affected me to this day. We were invited, I was sharing on another interview, but I was invited last summer to a 50th birthday party, and they said, you and your wife are invited. And I said, can we bring the kids? And they said, no kids. And we had to fly to Wyoming to do this. And I said to my wife, I said, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it, because we've never flown without the kids. We've traveled with the kids to New York, with the kids to Seattle, with the kids places. But I've since become a parent of 17 years. I have curated my life that I've never been on an airplane with my wife without the kids, because I don't want to ever, God forbid, abandon my children. So
Mm.
I fly by myself. That's fine. My wife flies by herself to jobs or whatever she's doing. That's fine. But we've never been on an airplane together. So that still is something that I'm realizing that became my little way of doing things for the last 17 years. And I know it's going to have to change. My daughter's going off to college soon. So I'm going to
I
have
was
to
just thinking that very thing. I
I'm,
mean,
yeah,
the
I'm going to have to,
departure, there comes a natural succession in life where the child becomes an adult. And I can't help thinking how challenging it's going to be for you to get into that place of her saying, Dad, I'm leaving, right? And like, I'm not coming
yeah,
home tomorrow. I will be
yeah,
home when the semester ends or at the break, but this isn't,
yeah.
that's going to be, sounds like it's going to be absolutely heartbreaking for you in that moment.
Yeah, it's going to be really strange. And at some point, maybe my daughter my other daughter, they're living out of state, and we're going to have to go fly to them. And like at some point, I need to let that go. But
Yeah.
I'm realizing that I've kind of ignored it, put it to the side, and put my own little fog bubble over it, where I didn't realize until last summer. I was like, oh my gosh, I've never flown without my kids, because I've just
Mm,
been afraid to do so. So
yeah.
those are some of the separation things that still I carry with me as an adoptee.
That's really interesting. Have you talked to your children about that?
I did. And I let them know, like, hey, we're not doing this trip. And I'm realizing been because of that. They didn't miss anything, so they shook it off. If I had done something like that and it meant they didn't get to go to Disneyland or something, they would have been upset. But they were
Yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, well, you guys just stayed home. But no, I've told them that. And I've also told them at times as a parent, when I'm parenting and things come up and I realize it's touching on an adoption issue, I will pull the kids to the side and say, look, dad's working on things as well as, you're learning things. So is 55-year-old dad. Like,
Mhm.
I'm still learning things, and I apologize for the things that I still need to work through that I end up putting onto you. So I think there is something to talking to other adoptee parents about what it is to parent coming from that adoption lack separation spot. So it
Yeah.
will come up. And my kids, thank God, I've got a wonderful family and we listen, but I'll have to kind of get down and dirty and let them know, look, I'm working, I'm not perfect, I'm trying to improve, and thank you for being patient with your dad. So
That's really cool.
yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure they appreciate it too. And there'll be a day when they're older and they can truly fathom what it means, especially when they become parents, and they'll say,
Yeah,
"Oh, I see how
it
if
was a
dad
friendship.
was adopted and he felt that way about us, that's part of the reason why I feel this way about my kids," right? That
Yeah,
just that desire to get back to your kids, nurture them, love them, smother them
yeah,
in hugs and kisses is so natural for many parents in general. But then
yeah.
you add on a layer of adoption. Like I've always told people, I was telling the story of my own adoption and reunion just yesterday. And I told the lady when my son was born, he was the first biological relative I had ever known in my entire life. And I
Yep.
stopped so she could think about it for a minute. And when she did, she was like, "Wow, holy mackerel," and she really and so I think it's important for folks to understand that parenting as an adoptee hits a little differently, right? Because of what we know of our origins and therefore what it means to have a child and keep that child and raise that child and see your mirroring and all the other stuff. It is a different parenting experience altogether. It's really incredible.
Yeah. No, I'll be at Christmases or at some big dinners where my wife's brother, my brother-in-law's family is in town. They got kind of a big family. And then there's my sister's family, and there's a lot there. And there might be 30 people around a room. Still, the only two people I'm biologically related to out of all that is my two daughters.
Yeah.
That's all
Yeah.
I got. And but I got two. My wife's like her niece looks like her a little bit. Then she's got a second cousin, and she's got a whatever, and she might be biologically related to like 12 people in the room.
Yeah.
I still got two. That's all I got.
Crazy. Yeah.
It can be weird that way.
Tell me about your teenage years. And forgive me for bringing your career in, but I can't help thinking about a couple of things. One, you young, handsome guy, right? I presume you had a few ladies who were after you. But in teenage relationships, they're not awesome, right? And
No.
I'm sure that there was a lot of that. You know what? Psh, I'm out of here, right? And I'm wondering how the get-togethers and breakups were for you in your teenage years with romance, because you've basically said when I decided I wanted to be with my wife, I was going to invest in this relationship to make sure we stayed together. But you can't do that as hardcore when you're
Yeah.
a teenager. How were your relationships in your younger days as a guy?
Well, I tried to apply that. My parents were married happily for 50 years until my dad passed. I tried to apply that even to my high school relationship. I had a 2-year high school relationship. I ended up kind of breaking it off when I went to college. I had a 5-year girlfriend in college. I moved to New York. And that ended. I broke that off. I went to, and the very amicable. Everything was always amicable. I didn't want anybody hating on me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had another couple year relationships, but I did get into a relationship that was difficult. And after 3 years, I got out, and that was a tough one. And I needed to kind of regroup. From like 27 to 30, I was single and working on myself
Mm,
and doing a little bit more of doing some adoption crossroads meetings with Joe Saul in New York City. Even went to see Betty Jean Lifton from Journey of the Adopted Self. I actually went
wow.
to her apartment on the Upper West Side, and I was trying to learn a little bit more about myself, and I had gotten into reunion. So I was working on that. And then about 6 months before I met my wife, I said, I'm healthy again and I'm ready to be in another relationship. And then that was,
Uh,
this is the one. But I actually had okay success. I really wanted to work on it. I know it's kind of unusual for adopted men like you and I. Sometimes we can have our troubles
Dude,
with
as you were
stuff.
talking, I was thinking to myself, what an anomaly you actually are, because you did the opposite of what many guys do, which is maintain a string of long-term relationships. I was not expecting you to say that. I can't help thinking that was your means by which to try to navigate
Yeah.
the adoption piece, is that you were practicing this "I wanna stay with you" thing from a very young age.
Yeah, I kind of felt like maybe it's something I needed to tether myself in, and I saw my girlfriend as that tethering piece. So, okay, now I'm attached. Let's hold on to that. So
Mm.
maybe it was my practice, or as you put, kind of that was my template for trying to stay connected. I didn't
Yeah.
want to get thrown out there.
Jeff said it wasn't until college when he started redefining who he was, investing more into becoming himself. He said he liked himself a little bit more as he expanded his friend group away from people he had known since he was in kindergarten. Jeff's curiosity about who brought him into the world and what his origin story was crept into his consciousness. When he decided he wanted to attempt adoption reunion, Jeff went home from college for the weekend and he sat down with his parents.
And I was really nervous to say, hey, I would like to look for my biological parents, by biological roots. And I said, this is not a commentary on you guys. I love you guys, but I do need to know how I got here. And it's hard. It's kind of like feeling like you're breaking up with your parents, or like, hey, you didn't do good enough, so I'm going to go look somewhere else. So it was hard for me doing that. But my parents were very supportive and said, I think you should do that. It won't be easy. You might find some things that are hard to deal with, but we're behind you 100%. And I got lucky and found within 6 months after having that conversation with my parents. But I felt like I was ready to look into who is Jeff. Yeah.
That's incredible. And it sounds like they received it okay.
Yeah.
That's also incredible. That's not always the case. And I love that you set the conversation up with, this is not a commentary on your parenting or my love for you. This is
Yeah.
a need within me. And I think that may be a component of the conversation that some adoptees miss. We get
Yeah.
so attached to the fact that we want to search that some folks, not all, will not take the extra moment to say, I love you. You're my parent. However, I also need this other piece. And it's good that you set them up with that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what did you do next? Did they give you documents? How did you even go about your search? And what year is this?
This is 1991. My last year. It's October of 91 is when I met my birth mother. So let's say spring of 91, because it only took 6 months. Speaking with my parents, they did give me all my non-identifying information, and there wasn't a lot there. I knew height and weight and hair color and whatever. But I joined ALMA, which doesn't even really even exist, Adoptees Liberty Movement Association. And there was a chapter in Chico, and this woman, Leela Hicks, was our den mother. And I was the only guy who was 21 years old. It was mostly women, and there was one older gentleman who in his 50s. And then it was 2 guys and 18 women. But I went studiously every Wednesday and went to these meetings, and they said, start looking at marriage certificates around this time for anybody who might be that age. And then I wrote to the hospital I was born at in San Francisco, and they sent me back all these pages that had been cut out with identifying info. But in the top of the page, I don't know why they allowed that to go through, or maybe they gave me that clue, but it said Taylor baby. And then I knew my birth mother's middle name was Lynn. So my girlfriend in college wrote handwritten, hi, I am Ms. Lynn Taylor. I would like my birth records from this day. And the same request for the same records. This is over like 3 weeks. We're like, let's write it back. And she's writing it out and I'm telling her what to write. We sent in. Either there was somebody else working there, or we took the bait and they said, okay, I can't get fired. Now I can give it to them. They gave me the same 9 pages with everything.
So she
Everything
wrote
in it.
the letter posing as your birth mother using
Yes.
woman's middle name and
Middle
last
name.
name, which were
Yeah.
accurate.
Which were accurate, but there was just a Ms. There wasn't even a first name. It was a Ms. Lynn Taylor, and Taylor's a made-up last name.
Wow.
And we got everything. And Leela was shocked. I took it in
And-
on Wednesday night, and she was like, "How did you get this? We must have somebody on the inside at San Francisco Children's Hospital." We were all just shocked. So
And so the records people handed it to her or to you?
the records people put it in the mail and mailed it back to me up at Chico.
So
Yeah.
anybody who, it would be coincidental for anyone who knew that you had just asked for these records.
Right.
But then if one person received your inquiry and a different person received the second inquiry from the fake Ms. Taylor, they would never have connected the two. And so they would have absolutely just sent it on.
Yeah. So that's what we're thinking. Or we're like, but maybe it was the same person and maybe they purposely left that little Taylor baby thing in the corner and we took the bait and maybe they gave it to us saying, because they knew that this was an adopted child.
Yeah.
Maybe they knew
They
that they
said,
couldn't get fired if they helped out.
Yeah. Good job. Wow. That's incredible. So what do you find in this information that you received? You said, what was it, 9 pages?
It was 9 pages. It just said my weight and what time my birth mother was relinquished or was released from the hospital. And it says she was picked up by her father, and it had all this info, but it had a social security number. And we had a police officer in our town that was friendly with our den mother. And this police officer was adopted and would run social security numbers for adoptees on the down low.
That's
So
wild.
yeah. So she's like, I'm gonna get it for you. And I immediately got she said, if you've got a pen and paper, this is where she lives in Oregon. So I had everything. It happened so quick and it was so bizarre. And then I just stared at the paper for the info for like 3 or 4 days. And then they train you what to say when you call. So I was working over my training and I got the nerve to call like 3-4 days later. I was with my roommate. I was in my apartment in Chico, and my roommates were very encouraging. And I went in there to make a phone call. And when you call, you're supposed to say, "Hi, I'm calling long distance. This is 91. So I said, I'm calling long distance. Can you take down my number in case we get disconnected? I'm having a little bit of issues on my end." Because if I say anything next that she doesn't want to hear and says, "I can't believe this," and hangs up the phone, my name and phone number are going to be just staring at her. And eventually I'm going to burrow like a worm back into her head.
That is brilliant.
Yeah. So that's how we were trained to do this. And so I called her. My half sister picks up the phone, gets my birth mother on the line. And I told her all of that. She said, "Yeah, okay, I'll write it down." I said, "Okay, well, on November 30th, 1968, you and I shared the miracle of my birth." What? It was dead silent, and you could hear her take a breath. I have the recorded conversation. It's like she goes, "Can you excuse me for a second? I need to get some tissue." And she came back and she said, "Now, what was the name they gave you?" I said, "I'm Jeff now." She said, "Well, I named you David. So it's Jeff now." "Okay, I'll remember that." "And where did you grow up?" And I told her, "Not far from where I was born." And it took a couple weeks after that of exchanging photos, and she needed to call family members because I was born in secrecy. Nobody knew I existed. So she called her cousins and her aunt and uncle and said, "By the way, nobody knew this, but I had a kid and they're going to come up to meet me. And after the second night, I'd love for you guys to come over and meet Jeff." So I met a ton of people my second night up there, of all these people that didn't even know I existed. It's surreal. And when I got off the airplane, you used to be able to, before 9/11, be at the gate.
Yeah.
So she said, "I'll be wearing a red jacket. Look for the red jacket." And I got off came down the little tube out of the plane, and I see a red jacket. That must be her. And you're just giving them a hug. Like, I can't believe this is like where I came from. It's bizarre. It's kind of bizarre.
That is absolutely wild. What did you see in her that was a part of you? How did there's that moment where I remember this when I met my birth mother. At first, I dove on her, right? I just complete hug, utter
Yeah,
tears. But then when I was able to pull back, I could actually see my face on this woman. I couldn't believe it.
yeah, yeah. It was eyes, nose, mouth, hands. We were just comparing everything and like ears or, just we just yeah, but to look at somebody that had something of yours was shocking because I'd never seen it before in my life ever.
Yeah. The
It was
mirroring is unbelievable, both in its absence and when you're able to get it in
yeah,
reunion. Is
yeah,
absolutely insane. Wow.
yeah.
So she picks you up at the airport, drives you home. Are you by yourself? Is she by herself?
Yeah, it's just us two. And she did say, hey, so at home will be your brother and sister and my husband, John. And I'm not related to him at all. Wonderful man. And that was it. So we're going to go meet them. And I saw a guy who was 10 years younger than me. That's my half brother and my half sister. And he was tall like me. And just seeing physical resemblances is a mind blower.
Yeah,
So
it
it
re
was quite crazy. Yeah.
she told them about you before your call?
She told them about me after I called. She had never said anything. They had no idea I existed. Her husband knew I existed. He knew my birth mother had wanted to look for me, and evidently she said had put something in at CHS in Oakland saying if Jeff ever looks, but I didn't get any notification of that.
Yeah,
So
there was none of that. That is absolutely true. Wow.
there's none of that.
Unbelievable. So how
Yeah.
was the first evening there in your house? You're looking at half siblings, you're sitting there with your birth mother. I mean, you're in a family home.
Yeah, it's surreal. I'm looking at things and talking, and it's really kind of, yeah, a real moment of this is your life and here you are. And I couldn't believe I was actually doing this. And these are some blood relatives here. And it took a while to digest what was going on. And it was just a really great experience. And the relationship took some time. It was like the Wright brothers in the plane, like starting to get off the ground. Like our relationship is in flight now, but we've had some ups and downs with the relationship and some boundaries that we need to put in for, my birth mother wanted like do blended Christmases and we'll bring all of our family down and we're all going to hang around your house in the Bay Area. I'm like, no, you ain't.
Yeah.
I ain't, no, because I don't want to be spending Christmas with two moms. And I don't know, have you been in the room with two mothers? It ain't my favorite, it's
Say more. What is it like for you?
I feel like I'm in between this. There's one woman who is my mom that raised me and fed me, and there's another one that gave birth to me. And so the one that raised me might have issues with, you know this wasn't my natural child. The one that gave birth to me is saying she raised my kid, and it's tense, and I'm in the middle, and I don't have divorced parents, but I've heard that can be pretty tough too. And I don't know, I think the last time that happened was at my wedding, and I don't really feel like doing that again.
No, you
you
once
know
I would imagine once you do that and you feel how uncomfortable it is, you can just kind of check the box and go, well, they've seen each other. I'm done.
yeah,
Right. I
yeah,
don't need to do that again. Yeah, I can imagine. No, I never had that opportunity. And I think I would have liked to have, but I can imagine that it would be tense for all the reasons you named, right?
yeah,
The sort of imposter syndrome that perhaps your adoptive mother might feel, the lack and jealousy that your biological mother might
yeah.
feel,
And those
right?
are just happening all over, and I'm kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
And I'm also protective of my family. They're the ones that were there for me. So My mom and dad, I couldn't have gotten a better situation to help guide me through my adopted life than my two parents that I got.
Jeff asked his birth mother about his birth father's identity. His birth mother said she was still in touch with the man's mother, so she called the woman who gave up the man's phone number. A lot of times, we have different expectations for how that first call to a birth parent is going to unfold.
Not my kind of person. First thing was, "You're not looking for money, are you?" And I was like, "No, dude, I'm not looking for money. Yeah, I'm just calling to say hey, like just letting you know I'm alive. And at some point, if I ever get down to Arizona, we can go for." And I happened to be there like 3 years later. In '95, I was doing a job shooting in Arizona, and we went out for dinner. Kind of a bizarre guy. He took me to his tennis club and walked me to this woman that I think he was trying to get with. And I don't know what her name is, Betty or something. He's like, "Hey Betty, how you doing? This is my son Jeff." And she's like, "Oh, hi Steve. I didn't know you had a son." And I mean, he'd never mentioned it. I mean, he barely knew he had a son either. But it was a way of him winning the affection of this way. And he did it a couple other times as we're walking around the club. I was like, "This is gross." I
You
feel
were a
like I'm,
trophy.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then I
May I ask, was this sort of in the height of your career at all? Was that part of it for him?
Yes, I think
Yeah,
so. I think so.
yeah.
And so he was just showing me around, and people were like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't realize you had a son." And I don't know if I like the words he says, and his politics aren't mine. I'm like, man, I don't even think you can say those words anymore, dude. Like, cut it. And I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan. So I've seen him once since then. It's the last time I've seen him when my older daughter was about 2 years old. So I saw him like 15 years ago. I don't have, I don't know if I'm supposed to feel guilty that I don't have any desire to see him again. But then I've also heard other people don't have as much of a connection with their biological father side of things, which then makes me feel a little bit odd because I'm a biological father. And would my kids ever feel like they could, like, I hope I'm not as expendable as this douchebag is, but I don't have
Well, I
any.
mean, you
Yeah,
know, I think the adjective you just used would
was
differentiate between whether you're just expendable or not, right? Like
I
that's
know, but I start getting into all these things like, oh my gosh, yeah. So I feel somewhat bad that I say this, but I don't really need to see him anymore. And
no, but it's a reality, dude. Like,
yeah,
here's the thing. You've probably got friends in your life that you love more than this gentleman, right?
absolutely.
He was present for what transpired. Doesn't sound like, I have no idea what the backstory is, but it doesn't sound like he was expecting you and wasn't searching for you. So that suggests to me at least a leaning of how he may have been in the past. I don't want to
Yeah.
sort of cast my assumptions on him, not knowing how he was. He could have been very much in love with your birth mother. I have no idea. But the simple fact is, I heard in your reunion with him something that happened with the guy I thought was my birth father, which was not a empathetic, here's this person looking to connect with me, but what is this going to do to me? Right.
Right.
It was an immediate, let me take the spotlight from you and turn it on to myself and see how this is going to be impactful. And that does leave a lasting impression. You only get one chance to make a first impression. And if that was the first impression, it's very hard to come back from that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, your immediate reaction to something says a lot about who you are. And if your
Exactly.
immediate reaction is, I hope you don't want anything from me, that's an immediate wall that I could see you being very challenged to even want to overcome, let alone being able to do so if you tried. So there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with you not wanting to like notice dude.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you find the correct biological roots on your father's side?
Yeah. So short version is my birth mother had always told me who my birth father was. She
Yeah.
told her best friend who helped me get adopted. I mean, her story was unwavering, never changed. She died about 6 years after our reunion, and I knew from her story that she was hurt by the whole thing, and he didn't help her. So my immediate thought was, he didn't help her then, he doesn't get to know me now. But
Yeah.
then she passed away, and I was like, God, like, it takes two, and I don't want to only know one of the two people who was responsible for my life on this earth. So to cut a long story short, I found this dude, and he did a kind of a similar thing. He was just not, I mean, just zero connection.
Yeah.
And I was willing to let the relationship go, but I decided that I wanted to just listen. I'm going to take a day trip. I'm going to get on a plane. I'm going to land, talk to this guy, suck it up, be face to face with him, and leave.
Yeah.
And he ends up sending me a letter before we can ever do that and says, I'm not the guy. And I was like, oh my gosh. So to further fast forward, we're doing DNA testing in my family because my wife's mother, my mother-in-law, is also an adoptee, but she's never wanted to search.
Yeah.
But my younger sister-in-law in Los Angeles said, holy crap, mom's adopted. We should all do DNA tests. Let's learn about her. And in doing DNA tests to learn about my wife's family, and then therefore my son, I submitted my DNA as well. And Ancestry DNA just randomly pointed me to my birth father. I'm literally sitting in bed one night, and I'm not even expecting to find this guy because the first guy had signed off from our relationship, and my birth mother's
Yeah.
dead. So I was like, I give up. And so I'm sitting there looking at this thing going, holy crap, this says this guy is my father. And in fact, it was not the guy that my birth mother said. It was a totally different person. So
Wow.
it's a wild journey, Chief. It's a really wild journey. But
Did you did you find that your birth mother's story ever changed with you, or it stayed the same?
no, it was absolutely consistent. She, I found, was incredibly honest about the whole thing. I mean, she told me things like, I thought about searching for you, and I almost did, but I didn't pull the trigger because I knew that you were getting closer and closer to your adoptive parents. She said that, like I said, the man that she named as my birth father,
Yeah.
she was 100% consistent across everybody she ever talked to. She also told me that if in her life she ever got close enough to somebody, she would tell them that I was out in the world and that if anybody came looking for her, she wanted to be found. She never changed her last name because she wanted to be found. I mean, she was incredibly consistent. She also,
Yeah.
I'll tell you, Jeff, had a 1972 C-section scar. And as far as I know, that could have been vertical. I don't know that for sure. I never saw it. But all that to say, every time you go to the pool, get in the shower or out, you walk across a mirror and catch yourself sideways, it doesn't matter how good your day is. You're
Yeah.
never forgetting that you have given birth to a child.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to say that any other woman would. I'm simply saying that a scar on your body from that event will absolutely remind you daily. So she was always candidly honest.
Yeah.
It wasn't
Yeah.
brutal. It was just facts.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated that about her.
That's
She
great.
never hid anything from me. And so on that, I'd love for you to tell me about some of the ups and downs with your birth mother. You guys have, you said you've taken flight, but there were
Yeah.
some challenges with overstepping boundaries. Tell me about some of the challenges that you guys had and how you overcame them, more importantly.
One was after we met, then my birth mother and her husband moved to the Bay Area from Portland. So my mom's friends were like, we just had lunch with a woman who says she's Jeff's birth mother. And my mom was like, what? So she moved close to where
Wow.
the Forneys grew up or were living. And then she shared the story,
Hmm.
she did an article for Diablo magazine and shared the story of our reunion, but didn't say my last name, but held up a photo in a magazine. And I got like 30 some odd voicemails in my apartment in the East Village in New York City saying, dude, you're like all over the place and it doesn't look that good. The way she kind of made it seem like I showed up and then I took off. Like, it's like, well, I showed up, but then I graduated, 4 months later, and then I fell into this world of living in New York and modeling. And it's not against you. I need to go to New York. And
Right.
like, but the way it was portrayed, it was like he showed up and then he took off. And I was like, that's not cool. And my photo is all over this. Everybody knows that's me. And so I don't think we spoke for 2 or 3 years after that, and then we came back around. We've had arguments over one time. My She said to me, "When am I gonna, I want to make sure I get to see my grandchildren." I go, "Well, I don't have any children yet, but when I do, maybe if our relationship is still going, of course." And she goes, "Well, no, I get to regardless. I relinquished you. I didn't relinquish my grandchildren." I was like, "What? If it ain't going good by me, it ain't gonna go good by that."
Right.
So
Maybe you missed the part where we still have to be in a relationship.
I know. And I was like, okay, time out, not into what that just was. So that threw us off for another 8, 9 months. And it was a lot of, we can argue, we can like get on the phone and, "Are you kidding me?" And I say things, our conversations are, it's more like talking to a friend, not a mother, not a friend. Like, they're both friend and mother, but not friend and not like. So we're talking, and
Hmm.
yes, that was tough. And then the story changed after about 3 years ago. The story was, "No, I never relinquished you for adoption." I'm like, "Well, it says it on the papers. This baby's for adoption." And she goes, "No, you were kidnapped." And I was like, "What? What do you mean I'm kidnapped? You've told me I met Steve. It's, everything, checks out. Like, what do you mean?" She goes, "No, I decided when I gave birth to you that day that I was going to keep you." Like, "Well, did you tell people? Because everything you'd done for the months before was that you were going to relinquish me." So these are these dips, but that helped me understand that I don't that doesn't matter anymore how I got here or what the circumstances was for Jeff being here on earth. However it was, there was something more important called the universe that wanted me here. I don't care if it was my birth mother and it was a kidnapping, or she had to relinquish because her parents are Catholic, or I'm going past that. I don't need any of this I don't need her to conspire in my healing. I'm I'm wanted here because something even more powerful than parents, called the universe, needed me here, and for some reason it needed me here. And so it's been a project of finding why I'm supposed to be here, and I want to help others, which has kind of kicked me into this whole project. But it's those ups and downs can, I kind of made a dig at her. I said, "Well, it looks like you had a son 10 years after me. I've met him. And if he had been kidnapped, would you have again just driven home and just said, 'Oh boy, I don't know what happened?' Or, I mean, somehow he didn't get kidnapped," because she never talked to the doctors. I said, "Did you make a phone call to the police that I was kidnapped?" She said, "No, my parents didn't let me use the phone." I was like, "Well, you were 22. You can make a phone call if that's the case." So I understand that it's not, it- you know, it's easier to tell yourself these things, to look in the mirror and to say these things, so that it makes the digestion of what you've done a little easier. So I don't hold her feet to the fire on that at all anymore. It doesn't matter how I got here. Something needed me here, and I'm going to run with it.
Can I just ask one more quick thing about her? And then you've used the word project several times, and I want to make sure that I get to that. But I can't help thinking that part of her approach has some sympathy seeking in it. I'm sitting here telling this story to this periodical, and I'm telling it in a way that makes it seem like I relinquished him, but then he abandoned me, right? And
That's a
then
good point. Good point.
I had every intention of keeping you, but years into our reunion, I'm going to change the story and make it seem like you were kidnapped. I need you to feel
Mhm.
sorry for me. and I'm moving to your town and I'm trying to get close to your people in your community because I want to tell them what my side, because I know you've told them all. I just can't help thinking that there's some real deep sympathy seeking that is happening on her side. Have you ever thought about that? Does that sound
You
right?
know, I hadn't, and I think I need you to be my therapist, but thank
Yeah.
you. No, I really hadn't thought of it at that angle, but there definitely, that is a big possibility. Yeah, that's very much what could be at stake, because I do know it was very hard for her. She was
Sure.
very pressurized. Being an unwed Catholic girl, 22 years old, you're not coming home with that baby bump. Everybody knows you're not married. And if you do keep it, we're not going to help you with rent of an apartment after you get out of college. And by the way, we're not going to pay for your last semester of college. So good luck.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're kind of forced. I totally get it. It would be heartbreaking to give birth to a child and then hand it to a stranger.
Yeah,
It'd be
for sure.
heartbreaking. So I, in my own development and in my own seeking more wholeness as Jeff, putting this pie back together, I realize I don't need to get certain things from her in order for me to get to where I need to go. It's the story is less important than the fact that I am here, and I do have a lot of things that I can work with that can help myself, help others, get to know myself better. And yeah, really understanding my chapter one was huge. And
Yeah, for sure.
sometimes wisdom takes age, and that's where it that's where it came.
Yeah,
So
yeah, for sure. So again, you mentioned the word project more than once, and you have a
yeah.
phenomenal one. I would love for you, one, to name it, and two, give me the backstory. I don't know how you started this. So tell us about your work.
Yeah, the Innocent People Project. And I'll get to the name in a second. But what happened was I photograph a lot of celebrity portraits here, and I had Ray Liotta here at the home studio from Goodfellas. And he used the restroom, came out and said, "What's up with the black rocks in your sink?" And I said, "My birth mother's kind of the hippie. It brings good energy to the house." And he said, "You just said the magic words, you're adopted, so am I." And we just started talking. We were kind of blown away, and we kept shooting. And then we got in the car, and I had some locations all scouted out. We did that. At the end of the day, I was like, "That was an amazing day, Ray. Thank you for that." And it was purely a story I shared with other people for the next like 6 years. Then one day, I was talking with my wife, and I realized, there's more of these stories. And I feel like every time I share this story, it hits people in a way. I'll share it with non-adoptees. I would share it with adoptees. And the reactions that I get, it's like, there's a ton of these stories. I can't believe people are so fascinated by what I'm telling them.
Yes.
I didn't realize the power in the. So I decided to start photographing adoptees and sharing their stories to Instagram. It first started, I was trying to photograph an adoptee with an adoptive mother and a birth mother. That proved to be very hard. Some people don't live in the right, so that was, and then COVID happened. So during COVID, I was like, let's just go straight to the source, straight to the adoptee. It's a much easier. I know a lot of them, and you can find them real quick. Like, so I started doing that. And another friend here, Cami, aka Jenny Alpert, she's a musician adoptee here in LA, and she was singing a song called Innocent People. And I was like, man, I just love the way that sounds. I know this is your song, but I'm thinking about, I'm going to use that as the idea, Innocent People. I'm going to take this to the photo world. And so I've been photographing and sharing these stories of, we're all adoptees here. We're all innocent bystanders of ourselves that got here, how we got here, and the circumstances, no choice of our own. And we all have something to say. And a lot of times we didn't feel like we could say anything because there is that, I should just be grateful because I'm at least got a roof over my head and I'm not out on the streets. So it's really
Mhm.
hard to bite the hand that feeds, so to speak. So it you end up finding a lot of adoptees don't feel like they can really share their story due to the nature of how we became part of this family through adoption in the first place. So
Yeah.
it's been really life-changing for me, and I get wonderful feedback from a lot of people that just feel like they get to be seen and heard, and nobody really paid attention, or they didn't feel like they had a platform to speak. So that has been something. And I've seen you in San Luis Obispo a few weeks ago. I saw you in Kansas City. I was at Untangling Our Roots in Denver. I want to come see you in DC.
Let's
Like,
go.
you know, I want to do more of this. I do want to do a book at some point. Right now, it's all on my Instagram or on my jeffforney.com. You can go to Innocent People when you hit my website. And every month, I'll do another dump of stories. So I keep going, and I want to share more, and I want to help. And
Yeah.
that's where I want to be spending a lot of my time. So it's been amazing. And I'm trying to get possibly a docu-series out of this. So
Oh, that's cool.
that's a little bit more kind of, that's got some more work to it, that, for that to really take flight. But I'm trying to do that. I think there's room. There are so many stories that we can, and they
There
keep
really are.
hitting our windshield. I mean, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
And we've been hidden in plain sight for so long. And I think we're finding our voice in real time right now.
Yeah. Man, you hit on so much in that story. I'll tell you, and I apologize for looking away. I was looking at my phone because I wanted to see. I interviewed Jenny Alpert,
Yeah.
twice. I interviewed her number 96, the safe space that's Don's place.
Yeah.
And, anybody who heard her story will remember that she found her birth father living outside and that she took him into her home
Yeah.
in the most kind, thoughtful, methodical way. I
I
have
can't believe
never
it.
seen anything like what she did. It was absolutely incredible.
It was so incredible. She really understood the assignment, and
Mm,
she didn't try to change him. She let him kind of be himself, but
yeah.
gave him all the tools to get himself off substances, get
Right.
himself in. It's a mind blower. So that's
Yeah,
one of the, it's really great. And I'm
it
not sure if
was.
she mentioned, but like Dawn didn't even know where he lived. She would
Yes.
blindfold him from the apartment to the park in case he ever found some substances that he shouldn't be taking. He couldn't just walk home, bang on the window, and upset neighbors. And so he didn't know where he lived. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a fascinating story.
Yeah. But you know what that says too is I can't even think of too many scenarios where I'm trying to be blindfolded at all ever. But for him to allow himself to be blindfolded in the circle of her trust
Yeah,
meant how much he wanted to be in her life, right?
right.
I trust you so much. I will let you guide me anywhere because I know that you have my best interests at heart.
Yeah,
Absolutely an unbelievable story. And I interviewed her again. Unfortunately, her birth father passed away. And I reached out to her to check on her to see how she was doing. And we had a really wonderful discussion thereafter, too.
yeah,
So, two stories there. So, it's really inspirational, is the point, to hear you say that you know her, that her song inspired your project. I was also struck by what you said, that the inspiration for your project, the Innocent People Project, is basically the story of how this podcast came to be, right? You're going around, you're telling people your own story,
yeah,
something unique that happened to you. And as you said, there are so many of us hidden in plain sight.
yeah.
And I've often said when I'm out at events and anywhere where I'm talking about this, I said, if you look around, I guarantee you there's some adopted people in this room. You don't even know it.
Dude,
And
you're
it's
my brother from another mother. I'm with you on that. I'm totally doing that.
great. And this is the reason why I bring it up every single place I go, because I know that someone in the room has
Yeah,
some experience or connection with adoption. And it can be, oh, my aunt adopted two kids, or the lady whom I spoke with yesterday. Her name was Michelle, and she told me this unbelievable story of her own mother and adoption in her family and all of these other sort of dramas that made her story unbelievable. So I say it everywhere I go because I know that we are in fact hidden in plain sight.
yeah,
And it's like I said in Slow, if we were all at, we were all there for an adoption conference, like a meeting with Adoption, the Making of Me. And we were all adoptees together. I mean, it could have been a sports junkie conference. It could have been, a music lovers and if
Yeah.
none of us had said I'm adopted, you would never know. But
You never know.
so we are in fact hidden in plain sight. And so I'm truly appreciative of your work, because the other thing that you said that resonated was that you have given folks a platform and
Yeah.
that they feel seen in a way that they never have before. And I think that's incredibly fascinating. The same way that you and I have sat here for an hour or whatever, talking about your story, 9 times out of 10, an individual doesn't get to sit and have this deep of a conversation about their own story in life. And so it can feel good to have folks really listen, pay attention, and give you the time of day. It's kind of awesome.
Yeah.
So
I think absolutely. I'm with you.
yeah. Jeff Forney, this has been absolutely amazing. I'm so glad that you were here with me, man. It took us a while to connect, but you are my brother from another, and I'm really glad we got to make this happen. We've got 2
Me too, man.
really
Me
awesome
too.
projects, and I can't wait to have you in DC here, bro.
Yeah, let's just keep doing this. Let's keep doing this. Let's build the community, and there's more good times to be had. Thank you so much for having me, Damon. Really fantastic.
Absolutely my pleasure. All the best, buddy.
Yep. Thank you.
Hey, it's me. Jeff's story was fascinating, from his early beginnings fearing abandonment or detachment to his teen and young adult relationships that weren't fly-by-night, but long-term connections that Jeff invested in. Even though Jeff grew up in a home full of love, he still carried a fear of being left behind. And when he became a parent, he didn't just want to love his kids, he wanted to protect them from ever feeling the loss of their parents. That instinct to stay close, to stay connected and tethered, has shaped the kind of father Jeff is today. Jeff's reunion with his birth mother finally revealed a face that looked like his, but also the challenge of connecting with someone who had been deeply scarred by her past as a young, unwed pregnant woman. What stood out to me was Jeff's assertion that the universe called him into existence, regardless of who brought him into this world or how they did it. And now that Jeff is here, he wants to help others. You can check out the Innocent People Project at jeffforney.com/innocent people. That's JEFFFORNEY.com/innocent people. Or you can follow Jeff's photo adventure on Instagram at Jeff Forney, or on Facebook, Jeff Forney Photography. Hopefully, you'll meet us here in Washington, D.C. in September of 2025, and Jeff will capture the essence of you through his camera lens. I'm Damon Davis, and I hope you found something in Jeff's journey that inspired you, validates your feelings about wanting to search, or motivates you to have the strength along your journey to learn, who am I really? Oh, and quick reminder, if you would like to share your story of adoption and your thoughts about your biological family, please visit whoamireallypodcast.com/share.